when I introduced the film to the audience, I said that we need a film like this in this day and age, in this moment. We need Mr. Rogers' voice, his civility, a grown-up voice is able to give us, there's so much crassness out there. And when you decided to make this film, were you aware of the...
That's why I made it. I was born in 1967, and so the show went on in '68. So I was first generation Mr. Rogers fan. I loved it as a kid, and like most people, I didn't think about it again for 40 years. And there was something about how I came back around to the subject that, I mean, the brief history of it is that I was making a film called Music of Strangers with Yo-Yo Ma. And just as I was getting to know Yo-Yo, one day at lunch, I happened to ask him, how did you figure out how to be a famous person? And he said, oh, Mr. Rogers taught me. And I kind of laughed, and he said, I'm not kidding. You know, I went on his show as a young man, and he went out of his way to mentor me over the years into how to grapple with being famous and how to use fame as a positive force for social change and not something that would be a weight around my neck. And that kind of sent a light bulb off in my mind. And it kept leading me back in different ways to Mr. Rogers. He kept popping up. And a number of years later, I found myself watching Mr. Rogers' speeches on YouTube late at night, one night. And it was that voice. And it wasn't like I wanted the voice to go back to my childhood or to be nostalgic. I said, this is a voice I don't hear today. Where's this voice in our culture? And that was it. It was literally just instinctively feeling like I need more of that voice, and I feel like everybody needs more of that voice, because it is this grown-up voice that's speaking for, you know, for civility. How I think of it is, I call it radical kindness, you know, is what he was preaching, which is really, by describing the neighborhood, he's like, well, what kind of society are we going to have? How do we live together? You know, what's the social compact by which we live, and how do we treat other people, and how do we treat ourselves? And that's the thing that feels under threat these days, that we don't nurture that. You know, we nurture the opposite of that. You know, there's a lot of divisiveness. And I feel like Fred wouldn't have called it radical kindness. I think he would have called it grace. Grace was an idea he talked a lot about. You know, and grace in the Bible means the undeserved goodness bestowed upon you by God. So in other words, you don't have to do anything for somebody to be kind to you. Or if you are to be graceful, you are to treat other people with kindness, even if they don't deserve it. And that's what Fred was doing. I mean, that's what a healthy society should do. We should promote goodness and say, pay it forward, use whatever language you want, but that's the idea of what makes a virtuous circle of a healthy society, you know? And if we can get the circle moving that way and not in the disgraceful way, then I think we'll be a lot better.